Welcome to Milking the Franchise, the Cash Cow Chronicles, where me and Chris watch
movies. Meowvies.
Welcome to the show. This is the podcast where we watch every movie in a franchise and exist entirely in its intellectual property. My name is Tanner.
And my name's Chris. And
right now
Garfield.
We're watching Garfield. Oh. And it's all Garfield all the time in my life right now.
Yeah. I'm starting to dream about lasagnas. I got a tattoo that says "No More Mondays." You know, I'm really trying to live it.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah. I've taken every Monday off this week or the last 4 weeks.
That's what Garfield will do.
Chris, how are you today?
Oh man, Tanner, I'm doing good. Yeah. Yeah, summer's getting close, man. I'm a teacher and very excited for a little break. Just kind of counting down the days over here. How about you?
Counting down the days, eating lasagna. I'm good. I got a big update.
Oh yeah.
If I had a drum roll, I would play it right here. My mustache is gone. I know.
What prompted it?
It just looks so gross.
Okay. I'm not gonna say you're incorrect. I'm gonna trust your judgment there.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. I kind of did it as a joke, and some people wanted to see it at work, and then I was like, I'm gonna let it get all bushy and like cowboy style, and then I can't help but feel like I look like a off-duty cop every time I see myself. You know, eating.
You have more of a cop face than a cowboy face.
Well, the weight gain and the mustache, it's not looking good. You know.
Okay, I hear you.
So, yeah, no, it was time to go on that one.
Well, R.I.P. to the mustache.
So if you're sensing a lack of mustache energy, that's why.
Okay.
Maybe what? Oh, I thought you had some suggestion for me.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Well,
maybe try a little goatee, a little Iron Man goatee next time. See how that goes.
Okay, I will. Goatee energy coming up.
Perfect.
Yeah,
in the meantime, we've got some Garfield energy. Yeah, big Garf.
Some big Garf energy. BGE. As I mentioned at the top, this is the show where we watch all movies in a franchise. We're working our way through the Garfield movies. We've watched so far the first two Bill Murray theatrical releases. We've watched a lot of the TV shows and spin-offs, read some of the books, and played lots of games. Right now we're watching today. It's a little different of a format because we watched 3 direct-to-video, fully CGI or like computer animated, Garfield movies. First one's Garfield Gets Real, then Garfield's Fun Fest, and Garfield's Pet Force. Came out in 3 successive years. So we're going to split up some of the talking on that, do the first one together, then Chris will go, then I'll go. And we'll get through this monstrosity that is Garfield, the IP monstrosity.
There is so much to cover with Garfield, and we are only scratching the surface. This thing is really a behemoth. But then, next week will be our last week with the Garfield franchise for now. We're going to go see the new theatrical release and probably spend some time talking about John. At least that's what my milk's going to be next week. But I
hope so.
Yeah.
All right. Another thing we like to feature in this show is that we release surveys with every movie and ask you guys to kind of watch along, and at least you don't have to watch, but respond along with us, make some jokes about each movie, and get people involved. So
that's right.
We're going to read the responses to last week's movie right now from Garfield, The Tale of Two Kitties. And here we go. And then today there'll be a survey about these three movies. You know, every week it'll just keep going like that, just so you know the format. First question here.
So check those show notes. That's where the link is.
Check them out.
Come play along. Come play with us.
I also posted on like our subreddit, Milking the Franchise, r/Milking the Franchise, if you want to go there. So there's that. All right. Garfield mentioned in that movie he can't live without food in the fridge, cable and satellite television, and lasagna. The third thing being lasagna. So I was wondering, what thing can you not live without? We got a three-way tie between lasagna, food in the fridge, and hot dogs.
Ooh, a write-in candidate.
A write-in candidate. Then we got come up with another Garfield sequel title based on a classic novel. We talked a lot about that. The title confusion. We
Tale
got
of Two Kitties.
Tale of Two Kitties, yes.
Yep.
The first one here, and thanks for writing in, by the way. Great expat stations. Great expat stations.
I love it. That's such a good portmanteau.
That's a great one.
Yep.
I got Garfield of Cats and Mice.
Good.
Garfield the Great Catsby.
Good.
And then Garfield the Catcher in the Rye.
Oh, but cat.
Catcher.
Excellent. I also had a Catcher in the Rye pun, but I went a different way.
Scratcher in the Rye. Oh, Catless Shrugged. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Harry Potter, but Harry is spelled Hairy.
There's probably some inappropriate videos with that title if you dig deep enough on the internet.
I feel like Garfield is one of those too. They can just, it's like the Legos, Lego games or Lego movie where you just like, you put Garfield in, dress him up as like something else. Garfield, Harry Potter, Garfield, Marvel characters, or Garfield, whatever it is. You plug Garfield in anywhere. Then we got Scratch 22.
I doubled down on the scratch pun.
I was going to say scratch.
Yeah.
I guess he does scratch. He's a cat.
Let's have scratching posts and stuff, right?
Yeah.
That was my thinking. Anyway.
That's great. Then we asked you guys, what is Liz doing in London / the Carlisle Castle? Another big talking point last week was Liz just for some reason at the castle and in the UK, and we couldn't figure out why.
It's a huge driving point to the plot, too. It's like the reason they're all in London is because Liz is out there. Yeah, anyway.
Our first response here is, whatever she wants, she's a grown woman. But also, I haven't seen the movie since 2006.
Respect. Yeah.
Then we got trying to marry up.
Oh, yeah. Grab a duke. Grab a prince.
Duke.
Yeah.
Hey, I'd marry a dame. Why not?
Yeah.
Important veterinary work. That sounds about right. Yeah. Is it illegal to leave your will to an animal? Another plot point of last week's movie. A rich British cat was left an entire castle. The responses here, probably not, but I'd be lying if I said I actually knew. I know one woman left her will to Charles Bronson.
How crazy would that be to get an inheritance from a complete stranger? That would be wild.
Funny. Yeah, like I'm going to leave it to my favorite actor for some reason.
Yeah, okay.
And then just responses, I wish. And yes, watch Gunther's Millions on Netflix.
I brought this up last week. Yeah. This one was mine. I brought this up last week, but I couldn't remember the name of it. But I watched this documentary with one of my friends a few years ago, and it's about this eccentric woman who had this German Shepherd, and when she died, she left her entire multi-million-dollar estate and all this stuff to her German Shepherd Gunther. And the documentary is more about how a dog doesn't know the value of money and doesn't can't use any of this stuff. And so it basically became all of the humans that were in this orbit kind of grifting and using the dog to make music videos and acting really inappropriately towards young people. It was it got really dark. But there is a documentary, and apparently it is legal because this woman did it in real life, and they made a movie about it.
Incredible. So yes, it's legal. Wait, where was that at?
It's on Netflix.
I mean, which country?
Oh,
Gunther? Is it in Germany or something?
I feel like it was in Europe somewhere. Yeah, but
gotcha.
I can't remember where. Yeah.
So I guess the answer is depends on the country.
People, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Maybe just pay your taxes. Support schools and stuff. Fix the roads.
There you go.
Don't leave millions of dollars to a dog that just wants to run around and eat food.
I mean, you don't have any friends or anything that you can leave it to?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, then we asked you to rate Garfield on a scale of Mondays to lasagna. 1 being Mondays, 5 being lasagna. Average of about 2.5 out of 5.
Okay.
So
I think
right.
we both agreed last week it was marginally better than the first Bill Murray movie.
Yeah, I enjoyed it
which was a pleasant surprise.
Speaking of pleasant surprises, this was not one. We watched Garfield Gets Real.
Sick segue, Tanner. Sick segue.
I've been working on them.
I know. It's showing.
Yeah. So let's transition into talking about that. It's a direct-to-video movie, the first fully animated Garfield production since the TV show ended in the 90s.
Right.
It came out in 2007. Yeah, so these live animated Bill Murray ones kind of spawned a little, reinvigorated the franchise a bit, it seems like. But yeah, then we got these.
Yeah,
these were there's 3 of them, so it's a trilogy: Garfield Gets Real, Garfield's Fun Fest, and Garfield's Pet Force. They were written by Jim Davis this time around, which those movies were not. And we'll leave it up to. We'll figure out whether that's a good thing or not.
Yeah, and I'm kind of glad we packed all 3 of these into one episode, because the thought of drawing out these movies over 3 weeks, I think it's giving me a hernia, but it's hard to say for sure.
I can hear the hernia in your voice.
Yeah. I've got big hernia energy right now.
You sound like Frank Welker trying to voice act. Yeah. Okay. So we talked about Lorenzo Music was the best voice of Garfield, as we, in the animated cartoon and the old specials. He died. Bill Murray did the big movie, and then Frank Welker took over and was the voice for these movies and for the TV show, The Garfield Show, which came out right after these movies came out, and basically was the same kind of animation.
Do I know who Frank Welker is?
Well, we have talked about him actually before. Again, much like Lorenzo Music, he was in I think the Real Ghostbusters. We definitely talked about him because he's one of the highest grossing actors of all time. Technically, 3rd highest grossing actor of all time, because as of 2011 at least.
Yeah.
Because he's just been in so much stuff.
This isn't his personal wealth. This is the box office of all the movies he's been in.
Yeah,
is that true?
Yeah. I doubt he gets paid as much as a Bill Murray for stuff, but he's been in so many things. I had heard the name, and I know we talked about him on this podcast before. And I'm assuming, yes, he was Slimer and Ray in the Real Ghostbusters. So we did.
There we go. Okay,
he was Scooby Doo, so he's the original voice of Scooby Doo. That Scooby Doo voice.
Okay, that's a bigger get than I thought, because I did not really care for him in this movie.
Yeah, so many things. Hanna-Barbera stuff.
Yeah,
Super Friends, Scooby Doo. Yes. So, well, let's see. He was Fred Jones actually in Scooby Doo. Maybe I'm wrong, or he took over. Casey Kasem. Okay, now I'm just reading this. Maybe I'm wrong about him being Scooby-Doo. He was in Scooby-Doo though.
Okay.
Either way, huge voice actor. Yeah, but I mean, I'm just gonna say now, I did not enjoy his Garfield. What did
His
you
take
think?
on the Garf?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it wasn't great. It just felt lower budget than Lorenzo Music or Bill Murray, and with all the other low budget parts of this movie, it really, yeah, I did not really care for his performance for sure.
Yeah, I felt it seemed so lazy, and I know it's a lazy cat, but he would just like kind of, I don't know, like feel like he was long winded when he would finish a sentence, and maybe that's a choice as Garfield, but it sounded very lame, or like he was trying to impersonate Lorenzo Music poorly. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
Whereas Bill Murray, that's his.
Those are, I will say, those are big paws to fill. You know, Lorenzo Music was so great, and Bill Murray's a comedy icon. So how do you follow that up? But
true.
Yeah, not great.
All right, well let's talk about it. First of all, the first
one. It's time to get real, Tanner.
Let's get real.
Get real.
Get squeal, if you will. If you've been listening, you get that joke. This is a 2007. It came out. The first one here. Directed by Mark A.Z. Dippy. All of these movies were actually directed by the same guy, and the only movie he's ever directed that was like in theaters is Spawn, which I found crazy.
That is crazy.
Which is like, the classic comic book or graphic novel character that who was it? John Leguizamo? No, he's just in that movie. But yeah, he directed Spawn.
And then the trilogy of Garfield CGI movies.
Yes. Yep. They wanted a real heavy hitter here to anchor this film. And that's where we start. Oh, no, I'll talk about box office at the end.
Great.
Chris,
yeah.
Where do you want to start here?
Man, I feel like we need to talk about the world that this movie exists in. We jump in, Paws Inc. once again. It's also produced by something called Animation Picture Company and Davis Entertainment. So like off the bat, to me, it felt kind of low budget.
That company name, the Animation Picture Company.
I know. Just like it's like the great value brand of.
Yeah.
Maybe they've done some great stuff, but
well, here's what they've done.
Please.
A Spyro the Dragon video game for a Game Boy, and then they did Crash Bandicoot web cartoons. These Garfield movies, and something called The Outback, some animated like Korean movie or something.
Okay, yeah.
And that's it.
I think we can dunk on them a little bit. Yeah.
It was founded by John Davis and Mark A.Z. Dippy, though.
So this is a company just for these movies, then?
Sounds like it, pretty much.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know why they started a new one when they already have I guess they have Davis Entertainment and Paws Inc. Those are both offshoots of Garfield, right? And then they started another one that I guess maybe it's their animation division specifically.
Oh, like the 3D animation. That could be. Okay, that makes sense. But still, it felt weird to me. I just wrote, Jim Davis, we get it. Like, you do Garfield. He has 3 production companies at the top of this thing.
I don't get why you need 3. Just one is enough. Why do you need...
Just put Paws Inc. and put Garfield Nodi next to it, and you're good. We get where this came from. Yeah.
Start us off here. So the world that they live in, Chris.
Yes. Well, first off, the first line is, once again, I hate Mondays. But the sun wakes him up. But this world that they live in, in the Bill Murray movies and, with most Garfield things.
In the comic strip, yeah.
In the comic strip, it's just in the real world. There's a cartoonist who lives with his cat. And, they kind of explore the relationship between a pet and a pet owner. And Garfield gets a bunch of zingers and has, a lot of personality for a cat. But in this world, Garfield is a he has a job, and Odie has a job, and John has a job. So every day when they wake up, they go into work at the comic strip company.
So
which
they
is
live
a
in
weird take on this. Yeah.
they live in the toon world, basically,
Yeah.
right? Where everything's a cartoon. There's other cartoon characters that exist in this world. Even like cameos from other comic strips show up a little bit.
A little bit. Yeah, I want
A
to
little
talk about
bit.
that when we get there for sure.
But then other characters that are supposed to be in other comic strips that they made up.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's like talking garbage cans and mailboxes and like flying superheroes and stuff. It's just everything is kind of alive, or at least some other things. So it's a cartoon world, kind of like Roger Rabbit goes to the toon world, right?
Yeah, exactly. The
yeah.
cars spit out bubbles. Like the musical instruments are like anthropomorphic, so they're like they have eyes and mouths and stuff. Like it's a very silly little world that they live in, and it's a big deviation from where Garfield normally is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
It's kind of a strange choice, but I mean, they kind of make up for it with the story because that's
yeah,
that's the premise of this movie, right? Is they leave Toon World and they get real. So
so they go to work and they take pictures of themselves, and those are like the comic strip photos. So there's no drawing. Mm-hmm. Drawing doesn't exist in this world because everything's tuned already. They are drawings technically in the real world. You know, it's very it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but or it's hard to explain, at least in normal terms. But
yeah.
They take the pictures and they submit them, and then they turn into drawings on newspapers in the real world, which is also animated. But they go into basically
looks almost exactly the same. Yeah,
it looks exactly the same, but not without like talking benches and stuff like that. So
yeah,
and just regular humans. So there's some scenes of them, I don't know, in very like creating comic strips with these characters, and there's other comic book characters like Billy Bear and Randy Rabbit, really just uninspired characters on the side here. I did like Wally and his wife Bonita.
I thought those people might have been from a real comic, but
I don't think so.
I don't think they are. And they name dropped the name of their comic in the second movie that I watched, and I looked that up, and that's not a real comic. So they're creation for this movie. But we do get a couple cameos. Should we drop the cameos here?
Well, I don't really know them, but I kind of heard them. What were their names?
Dagwood from the comic strip Blondie.
Right.
That one was in the comics when I was a kid, so I certainly remember Dagwood. He doesn't talk. They didn't hire a voice actor to do it, and he has these very strange cameos where he's just kind of in the background. And then I believe that the yellow dog is also a real one, and that's from what was that one? Grimm, I think is his name. Yeah. But that one wasn't in the comics in Spokane when I was growing up, so I don't know.
I mean, I'm not
familiar with that script.
The idea for this universe, if they tried to create like a comic strip universe thing, is not a bad idea, but they didn't have the rights, or I assume, to all these other ones. So, you know, if there was like Dilbert was there, like whatever, just so many. There's so many. Charlie Brown was there. Dennis the Menace,
Harold the Horrible.
Yeah, and you get all these, classic comics, and they're all at the like newspaper, whatever business, whatever you want to call that. That's kind of an interesting idea, and it's sort of interesting, but the way they go about it in this is bad, and just it's tough to watch. Chris, what else happens here?
Yeah, so they're going into work, and the big thing here is Garfield is he's feeling bored, right? Because being in this comic strip feels like a job. It's kind of a grind, kicking Odie over and over again, and going in and punching the clock to make these comics is really bringing him down. And so that's kind of where Garfield's at this point. We should also mention that Arlene and Nermal are both in these movies pretty extensively. So they're just kind of hanging out at their spot, working.
Making comics. Yeah. And I will say the rules of this world are slightly different, where people can understand Garfield. Garfield can talk to them. And there's other humans in this Toon world too. Like John is part of the Toon world, but he can understand all the animals now. So there's in this Toon world, which is, it takes away from the whole point of a huge part of Garfield, which I think is a huge mistake. But all these movies kind of are bigger than just a normal Garfield strip, obviously. And when he gets to the real world, then people can't understand him. So yeah, I guess that's I
do think that this way of portraying Garfield as like going to a job and punching the clock is like, it's especially since Jim Davis wrote this, like it's kind of an interesting take on his role with Garfield at this point. He's removed himself as creator, and it's kind of like this business that is turning out Garfield comics.
Garfield exists on his own now. He just kind of Garfield is working and he's just there around. He's John. He's just kind of in the background. That's a good point.
So
just punching the clock.
And that's kind of what this movie is. It's kind of just punching the clock. So let's see. We also meet Eli. Eli works at the company, and he's one of those humans that Tanner mentioned, who runs. The way this whole thing works is bizarre. So they take the photos of the characters to create the comic strips, and then there's a giant movie screen that separates the Toon world from the real world. So all the comic characters will sit in front of the screen. If this sounds confusing already, that's because it's fucking confusing. Pardon my language. This is a Garfield episode. So they sit in front of the screen, and then they can watch the screen. And through the screen, Eli can go to any newspaper in the real world, and they can look out at the people reading the comics, which is incredibly creepy, right?
Yeah. No, some of the ways that they are able to see everything inside the real world whenever they want, it seems like. It makes no sense. And I think I realized later, it's like if there's like a newspaper in the real world, they can see through the newspaper pages, and that's kind of the screen to the world, right?
Exactly. And so in this movie, they kind of play it up as like, oh, they put out the comics, and then they can watch as like a kid excitedly runs up to the paper and, reads that day's Garfield strip, or like a dad reads it with his son. It's like very cutie. And they use it as like as a narrative device throughout the movie, which is, I don't know, in some ways clever. It's like, it's new for Garfield, but in other ways it's just kind of like, it's this weird construct with this big screen and this character that can go to any newspaper in the world and see what the humans are doing. It's kind of strange. And this also exists in a time where newspapers are kind of everywhere. So like in 2007, maybe newspapers were still going strong then, but I feel like you'd have a hard time seeing much of anything. This would have been
a better idea if it was like, like the live action Bill Murray ones where he was in a cartoon world and then came out to the real world with actual actual real people, not just another animated real world. Because it just like doesn't look different enough, or like, I don't know. Then have him animated like Roger Rabbit in the real world, but I guess that's just Roger Rabbit at that point.
But I mean, we talked about how I still think that animation style would have been way better if the real world was real world. And we talked about that with the first movie. I think it would have been great to show Garfield as an animated character in a real world, but
hand drawn.
Yeah.
So they're making the comics. They're seeing this. Garfield's kind of just bored and checked out, and has nothing to do with. He has a little moment with Arlene. Has nothing to do with her because that's his love interest.
Yep.
He just is in a rut and needs a change. And they're watching through the comic book lenses into the real world, and Garfield sees a hot dog cart in the real world and has this psychedelic montage vision of him like eating a giant hot dog filled with other little hot dogs. And he's like floating around with like ketchup and mustard bottles and stuff. And he just becomes obsessed with wanting a hot dog. So this whole movie
good chunk of the CGI budget went into that hot dog scene.
I didn't watch the second one, but in the third one too, Okay, so he only eats. He's like obsessed with hot dogs in these movies now. Lasagna, I don't even think is mentioned once in either movie that I watched. Is
Really?
that is? I mean, did they talk about lasagna and Fun Fest at all? Because in this one, I'm like, why is he obsessed with hot dogs all of a sudden? This is his new thing. He's like eating hot dogs. Yeah,
Man, maybe you're right. Maybe they didn't do much lasagna
there,
stuff.
there's no lasagna in this movie. I don't think the one we're
Yeah.
talking about. And then the
Yeah,
third
yeah.
one as well. He's like he has like a hot dog eating contest, and he's just eating hot dogs all the time. It doesn't. It's a strange idea. Like, why depart from the lasagna thing
It's
at
like
all?
one of the three things I know about Garfield. What are you doing mixing that up?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So they already changed two main Garfield things. No lasagna. He likes hot dogs, but also he can like talk to John and everything. He lives in this other toon world.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's where we're at here. And Garfield wants to get into the real world.
Yep. Meanwhile, Odie, he got a bone from the prop guy when they were taking the pictures for their comic strip for that day. And the prop guy wants the bone back, so he is decided he's going to hide the bone so he can keep it. And so he finds this place to hide the bone, and it's like a little hole in the screen. And so he pulls it back, the bone flies through, and Garfield sees it appear in the real world next to these hot dogs. And he decides, like if the bone can go through, I can go through. And Garfield kind of jumps through this hole in the screen, and Odie follows him. So now Garfield and Odie have both passed from the toon world into the real world through this very strange screen where they look out through newspapers. Did that make any sense, Tanner, or am I just talking?
Yeah, I mean, he gets sucked out of the toon world into the real world. That's all listeners need to know.
Okay. It just feels like we're jambalaya when I say these things sometimes. Yeah.
No, yeah, it's just through like a projector that they have through their newspaper prints of themselves or whatever. And yeah. So it's kind of like like in a plane or a spaceship or something when there's a hole in it and it like is sucking things in at a clip, and they have to like it gets sucked through with like a lot of force kind of thing. So they have to like plug the hole up to get it from, to stop like
they even said that the comic world is pressurized so you can't come back. And that also like made me just like look up at the ceiling like what is this? What even is this? But that's the setup for this movie. They go through this screen. They're in the real world, and all their friends, especially Arlene and John and Eli, are back on the other side.
Well, Chris, Jim Davis apparently started writing this in 1996, so it took him 10 years to figure out the logic there. He only had 10 years to figure it out.
I spent 70 minutes with this movie and I didn't figure out the logic. So good for Jim for sticking with it for 10 years.
So yeah, he gets into the real world, and it's just I don't even know how you want to talk about all this. A lot of shenanigans. He eats some hot dogs. Odie has this reoccurring gag where he's like, there's like a group of dogs, like 5 or 6 dogs on a leash, these little dogs, and this
little
old
yippy
woman,
dogs. Yeah.
This woman is walking them, and then they're like chasing Odie and the bone in comical ways multiple times throughout this movie, and that's like a big part of it, I guess. And the lady is getting drug along by the dogs the entire time. Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of just gonna talk about random bits here. At one point, like they're researching in the toon world how to like maybe get Garfield back, get him back to the real world or to the cartoon world. And there's like a hole in it, and one of the interns or one of the people at the comic book place gets like his butt sucked into the hole and plugs it. Did you see that part?
I don't know if I saw that.
I mean, you probably did. You didn't think anything of it, but it was this weird moment where like he kind of gets his back or butt sucked into it, and like things are coming out of his pockets into the toon world. And at one point, it zooms in, and like this giant cucumber, in slow motion, comes out of his pocket, and like they zoom right in on it, and it's just like a giant cucumber out of his pocket, slow motion, and gets sucked into the real world. I don't know why they added that little bit, but it was very. I had to rewind it a few times. Like, what? Why are they showing
What
me
is this? Why does that man have a cucumber in
this?
his pocket? Yeah.
Yeah, he wasn't even happy to see me.
Yeah. It's art, Tanner.
So,
Don't question it. Yeah.
yeah, I guess it's supposed to be funny. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't know. There's what else happens in the story here, Chris?
Let's see. Garfield meets another cat. It's like an alley cat named Shecky. And Shecky has a couple other alley cat friends, and they kind of become friends with Odie and Garfield. Odie and Garfield keep insisting that they are Odie and Garfield from the paper, right? Because in the real world, they would be sort of celebrities from because they're in the comics every day. And so Shecky is kind of like rolls his eyes and is like, well, whatever, but you can come hang out with me. And Shecky kind of like performs for food. And by that, I mean, he goes and does cat things on a fence, and people throw food at him to tell him to shut up. And that's how he eats every night. And he sleeps in an abandoned hotel, which we'll come back to later. But that's kind of the life that Garfield and Odie have found themselves in. You know, they left behind the comforts of Toon World and John's cooking and all that stuff for this much harder life where people aren't really giving them the time of day. Yeah.
Keep going. I don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So anyway, that night they slept at the hotel with Shecky. Also, Garfield drank coffee in this movie, which I didn't know was a Garfield thing.
I've seen him drink coffee. I think. Yeah.
Okay, I guess that does seem like it seems on brand. I shouldn't have questioned that. Yeah, and then next day they go to the park and they find a newspaper. They have some little bits where they check in with Arlene. Arlene drops a flower through, but the big news from the paper is that because Garfield and Odie have left the Toon World, Garfield's comic strip is being canceled. There's no more Garfield in the paper, and the newspaper is holding an open audition to replace Garfield in that primo spot on the comics page.
Yeah, so we get like a Shark Tank style audition scene for a while.
Yep, that's exactly it.
Yep.
And how's the competition at that Shark Tank thing?
I don't really have much on the other people there.
Okay.
Yeah, what do you got?
Pretty light. Yeah, I don't know. The big one though is there's a businessman comes in with a really strong cat and a really strong dog, who basically just do Hans and Franz from Saturday Night Live. That's pretty much the whole thing.
Hale and Hardy.
Yeah, Hale and Hardy. So it looks like Hale and Hardy are going to get their spot, and that was really their whole plan. Their whole plan was kind of to go to the newspaper, win their jobs back, and then in the meantime, John and Arlene and everybody on the other side of the screen is going to be figuring out, like how to get them back through. And, so if Hale and Hardy get this job, then their whole plan falls apart and they're going to lose their comic strip. And I guess they would still go back to the Toon World. They just wouldn't be famous anymore. And Garfield wouldn't have to do the job that he hates.
Seems like he could
like a win, honestly.
Yeah, actually, he gets what he wants. He can just hang out and eat lasagna, not have to work.
Yeah, hot dogs, Tanner.
Hot dogs. You're right. Hot dogs.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So at this audition thing, they go up and try to audition as well as like, hey, look, we are Garfield and Odie, and they look kind of like him, but I don't know. Garfield kicks Odie to try to prove that they are who they are. And it doesn't really do much, but they'd rather go with these big, strong, buff dogs that promote diet and exercise. So they just kind of like, I don't know. We're trying to promote a healthier lifestyle through our cartoon or something. That's what they're trying to. There's some kind of maybe satire or something Jim Davis is going for with that. Yeah.
I also thought it was funny. One of the big parts of the pitch with Hardy and Hale and Hardy, was that their names?
Yeah.
These muscly animals is all the branding that they could do. They could sell workout outfits and dumbbells and all this other workout stuff. And I thought that was an interesting, I don't know, for Garfield, which puts Garfield on everything. It's kind of a funny, kind of a funny thing to be poking
Garfield
at.
doesn't have a specific thing though. He can just be on literally anything. You just put Garfield's face on it and it's a Garfield thing now.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing he really has is lasagna, which, by the way, Chris, I saw that Olive Garden is doing a promotion with the Garfield movie, and they're selling Garfield approved lasagna.
Please tell me you're going.
I really want to. There's no Olive Gardens in Seattle, but there are some like in the outskirts.
Okay.
So I'd have to drive a little bit. We'll see.
Okay. If you can't make it, no pressure.
But, also, they don't do any door dashing. It seems like you have to order $100 worth of pasta to get delivery.
That's a lot of pasta, dude.
That's a lot of pasta.
That's a lot of hot news.
It's more. It seems like they have more of a catering thing than a DoorDash option.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. So, anyways, so Garfield and Odie are like they're trying to figure out their way back into the Toon World. At one point, which I thought was kind of funny, they lay a newspaper down and attempt to get steamrolled into it.
Yeah. They try and jump in, they try and jump through, and you're right. They have a steamroller and they're laying on the ground watching it come at them. Yeah.
And all the while, like all the people in the Toon World are at various times they're like able to see all this happening. And I guess it's only if there's a newspaper around, right? Because I wasn't sure on these rules. Did you?
That's my understanding is that they can only see out through the funnies page, and so
it can be any newspaper in the city or something, right?
Yes, and Eli is real good at like popping around from newspaper to newspaper.
Yeah.
What
else? What happens next?
I don't know. Garfield has learned his lesson. He doesn't like his life. He wants to go home. He misses Arlene. His home is in the comics, and instead of just sending a rope through and pulling them back in, one of those made up comic book characters that works at comic book company is named Wally, and he's like a short little nerdy guy. And at the beginning of the movie, it showed him using a fake accordion, little grabber paw in it. And so Garfield has the idea to make a big accordion and basically attach one end of it in Toon World and the other end in Real World, and that'll create this like accordion tunnel that they can walk back into Toon World through.
Yeah, like an easy portal with like a bathroom door on either end that's like connected through, like you said, an accordion style tunnel. This is where you get the cameo, right? Of what's his name?
Yeah.
Dagwood, and he's like in the bath or something. They take his screen door, so it's made out of just like doors from the place,
the Toon thing. Yeah, the Dagwood one was they go grab the bathroom doors to put on either end of this accordion, so you see Dagwood. The other one though was with Grimm, and they take the bathroom door from Dagwood, and Dagwood's in the bathroom. Like, I think that's supposed to be a joke. It wasn't laugh out loud for me. But then
we know how jokes go in this universe, Chris.
Yeah. And then they do the same thing with Grimm, and Grimm is not using the bathroom. He is drinking toilet water because he's a dog. But then they make a point to show him flushing it after. So was the implication that there was like something in the toilet while he was drinking the water?
Ooh, I didn't pick up on it. Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, it's kind of a weird bit, but they made a point to show that he's flushing the toilet. So anyway, at this point, their plan is kind of coming together. They've got this invention pretty much ready to go. And it's looking like they're home free, and they kind of are saying goodnight to each other in the hotel, and they're going to be able to go back home in the morning. They're going to meet the deadline for the newspaper. Because the newspaper basically told them you have 24 hours to get Garfield back online. Otherwise, we're signing this Hale and Hardy team. And so Hale and Hardy have decided that they're going to, kind of stack the deck in their favor. So they break into the hotel, tie up Garfield and the crew. And at this point, even they even said like Lady Girly Dog. Yeah,
Girly Dog?
Girly Man was one of the Hans and Franz like go-to lines, and they even Anyway, they come in and they tie them up, but they accidentally knock over a candle when they're leaving, and it looks like Garfield and Odie and also this new Shecky character are in a lot of trouble. But
where would you rank Shecky in your list of favorite Garfield characters?
Oh man, how low down can this list go?
Oh, you could say the bottom.
Shecky's fine. They're just like you said before with what's the bear called again? Brian the bear.
Probably Billy Bear. Just
Billy
generic
Bear.
Animal.
All these other characters are so generic.
Yeah.
I don't feel like Jim Davis really put his best characters in this one. But anyway, Billy Bear and Wally and John come to save Garfield and Odie. They use this contraption with all the doors. They go through the screen. And there's a mining cart in the hotel.
Yeah. Yep.
Do you want me to just keep going?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's fine.
Okay. Yeah. They use a mining cart. They jump in. The bear does his thing is like a snot trumpet. I'm not going to get into that.
A snot
but
trumpet.
they basically rescue these animals from this burning building. There's some shenanigans, and they go through back into the Toon World. And Hale and Hardy are left in the real world, and now they're living this trash can life. And also Shecky and all the little dogs that were chasing Odie kind of made it through the tunnel as well. So now they live in Toon World.
Yeah,
that's the end.
The dog chases will continue. There is a dance scene at the end.
There sure is.
And I was curious because the third movie also ends in a dance scene. Did Funfest end in a dance scene, Chris?
Oh, definitely.
Okay, good. So so far, every movie we've watched, if we include these as three movies, so all 5 movies have ended in a dance scene that we've watched for Garfield.
Yep.
Cool. Hopefully that trend continues.
We'll see. I mean, Chris Pratt, Yeah, we'll find out next week with the new one.
I did want to ask. It made me think of something here. So the Hans and Franz characters, what are their names? Biff and Stiff.
Hale and Hardy.
They exist in the real world, but they're like these souped up dogs. In the real world, you know what I mean? They seem like cartoon characters, but they don't exist in the cartoon world. And so that means to me that there is some kind of portal between the two worlds besides this rift that Garfield happened to travel through, right? Because if you're going to audition in the real world and then somehow, what's that? It's either that or what?
Or their owner just gives them steroids.
Okay.
But no, I think your answer makes way more sense.
I mean, no, I have no answer. It doesn't make sense is what I'm trying to say. Is that they exist in the real world. I mean, maybe there is some kind of other portal where like at the newspaper company they can they send you through to the cartoon world or vice versa. But why wouldn't Garfield be able to just travel through that to the real world or travel back through that? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a great point. I don't know.
The rules of this movie. Anyways. That's Garfield Gets Real.
That's right. Got real. Yeah, what'd you think, Tanner?
Oh, it's a huge waste of time. Do not watch this movie. Unless you have like little children. I think little kids might like it.
I think this came out at a time. Well, I mean, it came out after Pixar was already doing stuff.
But it came out the next year after
stuff. Go ahead.
Oh, it just came out, the year after A Tale of Two Kitties. I mean, there's a lot of cheap animated stuff, out there.
Yeah.
Can't all be Pixar, but it's just low effort, not funny. The characters are so generic and lame, and it moves at a snail's pace too. Like it is like boring. And yeah, I don't know. The characters all just talk slow, like as well. Garfield talks so slow, and um, it's just I don't know. What did you think?
Yeah, kind of the same. It's just like you said, maybe it would be good for kids and like a kid that was really into Garfield. Like, maybe I would have liked this as a little kid, but like kids content is so much better now. There's just so many better options to put in front of a kid
When I say
to
kid
inspire
too,
imagination. Yeah,
I mean like baby. Like this is for babies.
yeah,
Like it's like toddler, not like 8-year-olds. You know what I mean? This is for like 3 or 4-year-olds. I don't know. So that's kind of how I felt. But we got a sequel.
we sure did.
Do you want to tell us about it, Chris?
Oh,
Or do you want to say anything else about this?
I don't know that I have too much else to say about Gets
What do
Real.
you think about Frank Welker?
Yeah, I mean, great. Maybe he's great, but like this movie, the movie that's around the Garfield character just isn't very entertaining, and it's not
His
great.
voice work,
and
though, specifically.
his voice work doesn't add anything. It's also part of the problem. It's too slow. Yeah. It kind of drags. It doesn't sound, and Lorenzo music so defines the sound of Garfield to me. Like it makes this whole movie feel that much more like a knockoff. And the way the animation feels, here like 20 years after the fact, that it just has not aged very well. Yeah, it just feels like a straight to DVD movie.
The first couple minutes, I was like, oh, we're going to get a Garfield movie that's like just kind of set in the house. He's like, he can't sleep. He's knocking things over. He's eating. He's like, I thought we were going to get a more grounded Garfield movie, but instead we find out that he's in the Toon World, which is it's just a bad setup for it. I get what they were trying to do. They're trying to make it into a Roger Rabbit style thing, right?
But the two worlds aren't different enough.
I mean, if they had made a movie about like the comic verse and like we were talking about, that'd be a great idea for a movie. And Garfield maybe was kind of at the center of it. Maybe Charlie Brown was a main character. That kind of stuff could be fun with a bigger budget. That's not a bad idea. But it's just, it feels knockoff. The whole thing feels like a cheap knockoff.
And I think that the fact that they got, they live in this, they work at a job with all these other cartoon characters, and they didn't get any other famous cartoon characters. Like you said, like if we got Dilbert in there, if we got Dennis the Menace, like I think this movie could have been a lot different, but the fact that it just has Dagwood and Grimm and neither one of them has a single line really paints this as a low budget.
Yeah, and
I don't know.
They like they didn't even try to make it like, oh, we're like we are existing in that world of real newspaper things. They just tried to make up their own thing, but then threw Dagwood in there anyway.
Yeah.
Maybe they just got the okay to use it from the creator of Dagwood or Blondie or whatever.
Yeah, maybe Jim Davis is just buddies with that guy.
Probably.
Yeah.
But So, Chris, would it surprise you if I told you this movie cost $10 million to make?
No, it didn't.
Yeah, according to Wikipedia. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Where did
talk about?
Well, I guess they got a big director, and it sounds like the guy that got to do Garfield.
Big director.
He did Spawn, bro.
He did do Spawn 10 years before this. You're right.
Yeah.
And in between this and Spawn, he did 3 television movies. One's called Pixel for the Disney Channel. Pixel Perfect, Frankenfish. Oh, that looks like a Sci-Fi Channel movie for sure.
Yeah, that looks like a Bad Movie Monday movie.
And Halloween Town High, another Disney Channel movie. So,
okay.
Spawn. I saw Spawn. When it came out, I think, and very cool like design. I think that character is due for like a big a good movie, but it like wasn't very good, but it wasn't that bad. I'm surprised he didn't get any other work. Like it was. Did you
Yeah.
ever see Spawn?
I honestly, I don't think I did.
Yeah. I mean, it's bad. It got bad reviews. It didn't make it. It kind of doubled its budget, though. It wasn't a total failure, I wouldn't say.
Yeah.
It wasn't great, but tons of people have terrible movies and keep getting more movies. So, um, anyways, I'm surprised he didn't get anything else after that besides Disney Channel
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, it cost $10 million to make. The other ones don't have budget associated with them, so I'm wondering if the 10 million is for all three of the movies because they're kind of the same thing and made in succession.
Yeah.
And it
They
wouldn't
exist
surprise
in
me
that
to
same world with all the same characters. The animation isn't really that much different from 1 to 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. And they came out 1 year after the next, right? It was kind of like another.
Yes.
They cranked them out. Yeah.
They just cranked them out, and I have a feeling maybe they just released that budget was for all three. That's what I'm gonna just guess. But anyways, before I talk about the box office, because there is some box office, we'll talk about that at the very end.
Was this not just a DVD?
It made some appearances around the world.
Okay. All right.
But let's talk about Garfield's Fun Fest. So this is gonna be just Chris talking now.
Yeah, the way we did this, just because there were 3 of them, we both watched the first one and then we divided the other 2. So I watched Fun Fest. I watched it straight through. This one's going to be a little shorter of a recap just because I watched it straight through without pausing. But the premise here, it starts with a nursery story about this frog who drinks water that makes him extra funny. And so then lots of people come from all over to drink the water. To become funny because it brings joy to people around them, yada, yada, yada. And that kind of sets the stage for this annual event that happens in the Toon World called Fun Fest. And it seems to be like a open mic night where everybody from the town gets on stage and does like a little show of some kind. And their show... the winner wins Fun Fest, and Garfield and Arlene always do a show, and it's always what Garfield wants to do. It's like movie quotes or something, and Garfield and Arlene always win. They show one of them, and it's it's fine.
So Garfield's won every year, right?
Yeah, Garfield wins every year, and he always just kind of does the same thing. But Arlene wants to dance. She wants to do a tango dance with Garfield, but Garfield doesn't want to do that. So that's the setup. Basically, this new cat shows up in town called Ramon, and Ramon is this like swaggering, like Spanish, like sexy cat, and obviously knows how to do the tango and kind of steals Garfield's partner. And so Garfield decides that he needs to go find this pond from the story and drink the funny water to make sure that he beats Ramon, because on his own, his routine is falling flat. And so most of this movie is this quest to find this river or this pond. And along the way, he meets a bunch of woodland critters, and everyone teaches him a little lesson about humility or like listening to your friends or like some little thing. Garfield misses all the lessons, but reaches the pond with Odie, drinks the water, comes back. And we get cameos. Like we see all the other characters from this universe. So like the little yippy dogs from the first movie, Skeggy or whatever that character's name was, is in here.
Oh, he is.
Wally, and all those characters have their little bits on stage that we see as Garfield and Odie are on this quest.
Wait, he's from the real world, though.
Well, he went through the tunnel at the end of the first movie. Yeah.
Oh, okay, got it.
And then it kind of culminates. He makes it to the pond right as the show is starting, and the frog from the book helps him get back in time. And he finally learns his lesson, and he puts on the tango outfit that Arlene had bought for him, and like shows up on stage during Ramon and Arlene's thing. And it turns out that Ramon isn't actually Ramon. It's Nermal in a giant robotic cat costume. It's completely baffling. But Garfield gets his redemption arc, and Arlene and him win the contest with the tango dance that she wanted to do the whole time.
Great.
Yeah. It's...
Yeah. It's bad.
I mean, I don't know
same.
that it's the same. It's not worse than the one that we talked about together. It's just more of the same. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe the message is a little better in this one, because it is like about humility and, appreciating the people around you and doing things not to win, but, to show loved ones that you care. Those are all good things. Yeah, but overall, yeah, it feels cheap compared to the comic strip. This feels cheap compared to drawings by a man, and yeah, so wasn't crazy about it, but
feels cheap compared to something that costs no money to make, because it's just except for like pencil or I don't know, watercolor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do I have any other notes? Just let me check over here.
I see that Tim Conway plays Freddy Frog and was the narrator of the movie. Who
is that? Because the Freddy Frog voice.
You ever see Dorf?
No.
You know what Dorf is? Is the guy who would like sit on his. It was like a series of videos in the 80s where he would like sit on his knees and put his shoes on his knees and be like a little person and do things like be like Dorf goes fishing, Dorf does this, Dorf goes golfing, and he'd show up on the Tonight Show as Dorf. And I mean, I remember it clearly from when I was a kid, because we had like Dorf goes golfing or whatever on video. Anyway.
Okay. Honestly, that voice was probably one of the highlights of this one.
Okay.
His voice actually was pretty nice in here, but yeah,
he was on like the Carol Burnett show. He was a big guy in like the 60s and 70s, and
okay.
He was super famous at the time. Yeah.
Okay.
So he was pretty decent as the voice of the frog.
Yeah, I actually wrote that in my notes. Like the frog was good, but again, it's like it's in this movie that just feels really low budget and kind of unnecessary,
Yep.
And yeah, so that's Fun Fest. They basically made up a comedy competition as a way to kind of structure this movie around.
Cool. Yeah, the funny pond, that is very lazy and just, I don't know. It looks like the DVD cover has a review on it. It says Garfield's best movie. I give it 5 paws. 4 paws, I guess. Yeah.
Not even 5 paws. They can't even put that on the front cover. Yeah.
Well, maybe it was out of 4. 4 out of 4. I can't read. It's too small. It's too blurry, but I can't read who.
I guess the cat does only have 4 paws, right?
Yeah, there you go.
5. There it is. Yep.
Cool. Well, Chris, they made a video game about this as well, which
about this movie.
Garfield's Fun Fest and Garfield Gets Real both have a video game.
Oh my! Did you play them?
Not yet. I'll talk about the games I've played in the past week, but I haven't reached that year yet. I meant 2007 in Garfield games, and these came out 2007, 2008 about. So I'm almost there. Next week I'll talk about them when I play.
Okay, great, love it. Well, that's that movie. Honestly, the structure is like a quest that ends with like some light like sensei young grasshopper stuff, so like that's fine for a video game. I guess I can see it, but tell me about the third one of these things.
So this one's called Garfield's Pet Force. And superhero movies were very popular at the time, still are, but it was kind of before the Marvel universe really started.
Yeah.
Which Iron Man came out in 2008, so right about that time, I guess. It starts off with like a Star Wars text crawl about like obeying your mother, and it starts you off and you travel to this planet. A spaceship goes to this planet called Dorkon, planet Dorkon, where
Obviously.
there's Emperor John. So John is Emperor, and the that Wally guy that's been was in the first movie at least with the wife.
Yep.
He is like the inventor on this place, and he invents this gun with a magical diamond that like swaps heads. And it's just like, oh look, we can get like a dog to have a human thing. So not only can he fetch your paper, but he can read it to you too. So he invents this gun, and then some space invaders show up at this planet. Where it's
Wait, so this one doesn't just take place in a little town? They go.
Well, we'll get there. So it starts off on this planet here.
Yeah.
And Liz shows up, and she is an evil commander Liz. Whatever her name is in that. It is Liz something. Let's see if I can find it here. Garfield's Pet Force. What is her name here? It doesn't matter. It's just Liz. A lot of these people are in this other universe, but like as something else. So she's evil Liz, trying to take over this planet. So at first you don't know that. She shows up and John falls in love with her on sight. And they immediately get married to join their houses, to be his queen. But then she steals that gun that I was talking about and like swaps heads of a bunch of people and takes over his kingdom. And so I'm like, what the hell is going on here? And then the Garfield Pet Force appear. So in this universe, these are a group of superheroes where we've got Odious, who's a superhero version of Odie with like a big muscular body and Odie's head. And his special power is a long tongue, a stun tongue. That he uses throughout this movie. And then we've got Abnormal, who's normal, but he's like the Flash, so he moves really fast. And then we've got Starlina, who is Arlene, and she has ice eyes, or something.
Honestly,
so she can freeze
not bad character names for superheroes based on these characters.
Let me know what you think of this one. Garzuka.
Okay, you lost me there.
Yeah, so Garfield is a big, muscular, Superman-esque character named Garzuka. And he fires radioactive fireball hairballs out of his mouth.
Oh, God. Okay.
I kind of like that part of it.
Okay.
So they show up and they try to save the day on this planet, save John's empire or whatever. Doesn't work. And this because of this new gun that she stole here. So I don't know. This magic diamond is the thing that controls the guns, and somehow the diamond gets in the hands of, I think, Super Garf or Garzuka gets it. And then it cuts to so that's like the end of an issue. Basically, it cuts to the real world, and Nermal is reading a Pet Force comic book. So everything that we just saw was taking place in a comic book. But the story of this is that this comic book is happening and being written in real life. So the next issue, he goes to buy the next issue of Pet Force, and it's like basically they're in it eating dinner or eating at a cookout, which happened. Sorry, I'm getting confused here. But when he cuts out of the comic book, out of the comic book world, he's reading the comic of what I just saw, and they're eating hot dogs at a cookout. Again, I was like, hot dogs, why? There's no lasagna again. We're back to hot dogs.
Yeah.
And Garfield is just eating so many hot dogs. And they're talking about how this comic book world could be real, and John wishes he was an emperor or something. So yeah, they go on to get the next comic book issue, and it's not completed. So there's a bunch of empty pages in it, and they see themselves in the last couple scenes, and you realize this comic book is being like written in real time as like in a part of their lives. Does that make sense? Is this making sense?
Yes.
Okay. So
So it's
that's
being written. So like, is it kind of like the things that are actually happening to them are like similar, but they're being like shown in the comic book in an elevated way as superheroes?
no, it's all real. So it's not like
Okay.
everything that happens is just being kind of written in the book, and they're now in the Pet Force book as well. And these
Oh, okay.
universes
Yeah.
are real, but the pet kind of like a Toon World, and now there's like a Toon World inside of a Toon World or something, but it
Yeah.
is
Yep.
real
Yep. Yep.
still. And they travel. Garzuka, oh god, that name, travels to the Toon World here, and meets up with Garfield and the rest of them. The other ones go to the superhero world. No, it's the opposite. Garzuka comes here, and Garfield goes to the superhero world, and they think he's like in costume. Liz thinks that Garzuka is dressed up as just a dumb fat cat. And meanwhile, in the other world, he like gives Nermal and Arlene this juice and Odie that's supposed to like turn them into the superheroes that we saw before, the Odious, so that
Yeah.
they could become the superheroes again. It's so hard to do this alone. I don't know how you did it very well, Chris.
Thanks, man. Yeah. No, it's hard. It's also hard to maintain excitement about these
Yeah.
movies. You know what I mean? Just because it's like they're kind of slow, and you know they feel. Yeah, I don't know. They just feel low budget. That was my experience, kind of talking through this.
So basically, it just kind of goes on with the two worlds being merged.
Okay.
And the comic books just kind of being written along the way. Liz is trying to get control of the Empire and get this diamond so she can control everyone. The ray that she has, the gun, like controls people. So eventually she comes into the Toon World, Garfield's original home world,
Yeah.
and controls all the people in town, switches their heads, which creates these like zombie people with like swapped heads with animals and stuff. Kind of a wild scene. And then it culminates in this giant showdown with a giant trash rubble monster because like buildings are getting wrecked because of all the superhero action.
Yep.
And there's a showdown with it, and they get the Crazy Crew, they call it, a really bad name, which is just like Garfield and all the people from the cartoon studio that we met in the first movie team up to like help fight and lure the zombie people into a trap, and then they all turn into the superhero versions of themselves and fight Liz. At the end of it, they use Odie's tongue to like AT trip wire. You know what I mean from Star Wars, where they like wrap the legs around and trip the giant structure. And they swap Liz instead of swapping heads with an animal or whatever they've been doing this whole time, swapping heads with people. They use the gun to like swap her with a picture of a smiley face, so she turns into a nice version of Liz, Super Liz.
What a gun that switches heads is such a weird thing to put in kids' movies.
It like controls people and just like swaps their heads around, but it also she's like in control of them. So that's the whole thing. It does end in another dance scene, of course. But this time, Garfield and Arlene are dancing on Stardust in the middle of space.
I mean, there's no wonder they didn't make a fourth one. How do you follow that?
Exactly. That's how it ends. Yep. Rides off into the galaxy with his love. Yeah, they Emperor John marries evil Liz, or good, now she's good Liz. So basically it's just like it's just an excuse to get them in like superhero costumes and do superhero stuff. That's the entire thing. Yep. I will say I kind of enjoyed it. Maybe I definitely enjoyed it more. I'm not going to say it's good, but I'd say it's 2 steps better than the other one.
Then Gets Real.
Then Gets Real.
Yeah. Okay.
because
I
it was
would
just
agree.
kind
I would
of
say the
silly,
second
kind of
one is better than the first one too. Yeah.
had some momentum of just like it actually breezed along a little bit easier than the other one.
Sure.
But also shouldn't exist, you know? And
Yeah.
is not Garfield at all. Like there's nothing that makes it like the character Garfield even need to be there, you know?
Yeah.
Like in his superhero form, he doesn't like he should shoot like lasagna out or something. But like none of those Garfield themes even come up in this one. It's just putting them in superhero costumes. So and that's that. Any questions on that? I'll leave it up for questions for the audience.
Yeah, man. I thank you for that recap, Tanner, and thank you for putting yourself through that. Yeah, I don't know that I have any questions. It does kind of seem we talked about this off mic, but this franchise has been so fascinating for me because it started, with like just this cartoonist making a daily comic strip for this tiny newspaper in the middle of Indiana with John, and it kind of grew, and he got better at animating, and it grew to this behemoth point where he could just slap Garfield's face on top of anything, on top of a superhero story, on top of a quest story, and it it made money. And this franchise is so strange to me because it got so big from such a modest starting place. And I think this week is like a great example of that. Like they just put a superhero in this. This one's Garfield branded superhero movie, and this one's Garfield branded this. And yeah, it's
Yep.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been milked to death for sure. And not like
Yes.
there's not really ever a strong story that it's like basing anything off of. It's just a character. It's just
and
one
it's not
look at
a very
Garfield.
well developed character.
No.
Like he just is a cat that is lazy and likes food. And
again, like the three things that we know about him, or two things or whatever, lasagnas and Mondays, and not being understood by your owner, are completely just abandoned in these movies, especially. But that's like the core tenets of Garfieldism, right?
Yeah. And also the relationship with your owner. Like I think that's a really big part of why people like Garfield. And John does nothing in the two movies that I watched. It sounded like he had a bit bigger of a part in your movie, but like it's not.
Well, it wasn't even him. It's like a Emperor John. It wasn't even. I mean, it was him, but with like a hat on or like a crown.
Yeah.
But yeah, the dynamic and all of that stuff is lost. Anything that makes Garfield was completely lost in this one. Either way, kind of a cash grab. I don't know if it was successful. Let's talk about that. But first, Chris, do you want to see a fourth one of these?
Absolutely not. They could easily make one. It kind of reminds me. Do you remember that show Wishbone from when we were kids, where the little dog would like go on all those classic book adventures, and you would kind of watch along as he like did that. Like you could definitely make more of these. But again, it doesn't stay true to like these stories aren't connected to Garfield's character traits. They created a whole new Toon world just so they could tell these stories. And it just doesn't feel necessary. It's not connected to the character, and the jokes aren't good enough, and the animation's not good enough to justify its existence for me.
They took a stab at this bigger universe of like cartoon universe thing that they wanted to maybe try with Garfield at the center. And again, it was just too cheap and not very well made to even get anything going.
Props to him for ambition, though. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Tried something.
They did. They sure did.
They sure did. Well, so let's talk about the box office here. So these are direct-to-DVD movies. However, they did open in certain areas around the world in the theater. So Garfield Gets Real opened only in Turkey and made $1 million overall. It did open at number 2 the weekend it opened in Turkey.
Wow. Okay.
So I guess it's big there. I don't know why only Turkey and not like I don't know, anywhere else internationally, but that's that
I
one.
wonder if they picked it because it's a food named country.
Oh my God. I hope so.
I hope Jim Davis was like, we got to get it in Turkey.
We got to get in Turkey. That'd be so funny.
They couldn't get it in Greece, so they got Turkey instead. Yeah.
Oh, Greece. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's see. Garfield's Fun Fest. So that one made $1 million. Garfield's Fun Fest made $3 million and opened in several other countries. 9 countries, it looks like. And Brazil was the most profitable. So these are just, I don't know. I assume, you know how you go to a theater and you just see like, oh, some random kids movies playing at 10 a.m. and it's like only showtime. I assume that's kind of what this is.
I also wonder if like these movies do better in foreign language markets because all of their competition also has to translate into the local language. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So like the fact that the jokes don't really land in English doesn't matter as much because it might stack up against the jokes from another kids movie, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and then Garfield's Pet Force was the most profitable of the 3, open in 20 countries. And it made $11 million at the box office. So
which one did? The superhero one?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Pet Force. And these that one opened in, that was like a 3D movie when it came out. So that might have been kind of its draw theatrically. And I think even that Garfield Gets Real said it was maybe in 3D. So maybe that's kind of why they did it. They made it in 3D to hop on the 3D train that was happening around that time.
Right.
And that was its only pull into the theaters was that. I don't know. But again, it's huge internationally, mildly big here, and that's the trilogy. Anything else you want to talk about with this, Chris?
I would be happy if we didn't talk about any more of it.
All right.
No, I'm just kidding. Do you have anything else? I feel like I said my piece. Like it's just fascinating where the Garfield brand started and where it's come by the year 2007. Like what a journey, you know?
And again, like these, I wouldn't even consider these real movies. I mean, they are, but just because of the length, I guess. But you know, normally we're not going to watch crap like this. I just felt like it'd be a fun extension of the Garfield since there's so much milk to be done around it that it gave us an extra week to like look at other stuff and
play video
does tie
games,
into let's tie into the next thing. The first thing I'm going to talk about here that we are going to talk about is the Garfield Show, which came out directly after this, the same kind of animation style with the 3D animation. And I think it just kind of led to this show here, with also Frank Welker doing the voice acting and maybe even lazier in the TV show than in the movie. Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of it. Chris, what do you got to say about this? I've been talking for a while about this Garfield.
Yeah, no, we watched one episode. Right? Did you watch another one, or did you just watch that same one you sent me? Okay.
The Garfield Show, it's called Attack of the Lasagna Monsters or something.
Yep. And again, props to them for like being ambitious. Like this is not just Garfield laying around, complaining about Mondays and stuff. It's he celebrates his birthday by eating a bunch of lasagna, and there's there's an alien race of like extraterrestrials that are shaped like lasagnas, and they come to Earth and see a video that John has made of Garfield just nomming on some lasagnas, you know?
It said he had 6 hours of footage of Garfield eating lasagnas that he compiled.
And my question with 6 hours, why are you still filming that? What are you going to do with that footage?
Exactly. Yeah,
nobody wants 6 hours of footage with that.
They were kind of trying to be hip and be like, "Oh, we're going to put it on YouTube." And put, at the time, it was like a newer thing.
Yeah, but like nobody needs that much footage. But yeah, they see that and then they run away, and that's basically it's a 12-minute episode. I imagine this was like half of a half-hour block.
Yeah.
So yeah,
this episode.
Props for being ambitious, but it's just not great. you know, like, and especially compared to Garfield and Friends, like it's just
no,
not.
yeah, it's bad. And there was like 5 seasons of this show, and it was on Cartoon Network and Boomerang Channel, and I think it was big internationally as well. It was like a co-production in France, I think.
Okay.
So again, it's big overseas, and it keeps it chugging along.
Haha, wee.
It bless you. And so yeah, the they're Italian, heavily accented Italian lasagna creatures.
Yep.
Which I thought was that was a choice for sure. And yeah, like you said, they see a video of this monster's cat eating lasagna, and that's all it takes for them to abandon Earth and fly away. These lasagna monsters. But Chris, this episode, I don't know. I mean, it was the very first one, so maybe that's why. But there's a video game based on the threat of the space lasagna, the Garfield Show, Threat of Space Lasagna, which I also haven't played yet, but I'll get there.
It is amazing the number of creative, talented people that must have just worked on all this Garfield drivel, like nonsense, is staggering. You know,
the game supports the Wii balance board to play. Do you remember that one?
I don't remember the Wii balance.
There was like a Wii Fit because it only came out for the Wii, Nintendo Wii.
Yeah.
There was a balance board for the Wii Fit game, which was like something you stand on like an exercise thing, and you'd like do your steps on there, and it would count your steps or count your.
Okay.
That's how you would do the workout game for the Wii. And it's funny that it supports that as a controller. You know,
I'm imagining you're just stepping on little lasagna monsters.
Oh, that's not a bad. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's something that came from this show. The show I don't think was received very well, but it went on. Anything else about the Garfield Show, Chris?
No.
Yeah. Yeah, it's basically, it felt like these movies, they did that, and then they continued with like, we're going to make this 3D Garfield thing because 3D animation's the wave of the future. That's how it feels, but it's all cheaply done and not very well done.
And by diving into the 3D's gotten way better, and so these look very dated and very cheap. By today's standards, yeah.
Yeah, it's like that. Yeah, that cheap old like 2000s CGI or animation. Yeah, not very good.
Yeah.
Chris, you got me any other milk for the week?
Nothing else for me this week.
Sure.
Yeah. We'll have one more book next.
Sure. Well, let me take you through my Garfield games here. If we're done talking about all this 3D animated stuff.
Yeah.
I've got just a quick rundown of more games that I played. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more games, and I still have like 7 or 8 more to go. How do you feel about that?
You played 7 games this week?
Yes.
This is a staggering amount of video games. Yes. Run me through them. Hit me.
There's like 20 plus, and I've played a lot of them already. But, again, I'm only playing these for like anywhere from 5 to 20, 30 minutes. But a lot of them are just short. I'm like, okay, I get the idea of this.
Yeah.
And it sucks. They're all bad. Not one of these has been good. There's not like a definitive one. Like Ghostbusters
There's no Ghostbusters 3. Yeah.
Yes, the Ghostbusters video game, which was like an awesome game. Some of the side scrollers were okay, but like this doesn't have it. There's no definitive Garfield game. It's just, it's so bad. Although this one's kind of fun. This is kind of like I played the Comic Maker a few weeks ago. This one's called Scholastic's Comic Book Maker featuring Garfield. So again, kind of just slapped on there, but you get to make little comic book strips. I think I sent that one to you that I made.
You did.
And it's not funny, but it's kind of fun just to like scroll through and create your little comic strips and add like pre-generated quotes and stuff like that, or your own quotes to it, and just make a really stupid. Make it, I was trying to make them as bad as possible in like a funny and bad way. What was the thing that I did? Splut?
Splut. Yeah, you went hard on the word splut. Mm-hmm.
Well, it's like one of their like bang, pow, like words. Like it's supposed to be like a splash, but instead the word is splut. And I just found that word to be funny, so I focused.
It is a funny word. Yeah.
So there's that. And then there's 2 games called Garfield and Garfield: A Tale of Two Kitties, based on the movies that I played, and they're both for PlayStation 2 and PC. Came out right with the movies that we watched previously. The first one is like a 3D, just open world sort of, but you're around the house and you're vacuuming items and trying to put them in the right place because they're in the wrong place, and it's really bad, almost unplayable. The second one was a little bit better. You're in the house in Britain or whatever, in the castle, and you're going around and just trying to unlock doors, and it's a big open world throughout the property and the castle. And that one features, almost right off the bat, one of the first mini games is a dance scene, Chris. Like
Did they get the Black Eyed Peas for that dance scene?
No, it's just like the generic music that's playing throughout the entire game. Just some like heavy bass, kind of funky stuff. But it's Garfield up dancing like a what's the Guitar Hero kind of game where you're hitting the right steps and dancing. So that was fun to find out pretty quickly. Then again, we got more dancing. That's I guess a feature of Garfield. Modern Garfield is dancing. Oh my God, let's get through these here. We've got a Search for Pookie game for the Game Boy. Typical side scroller, not that exciting. Garfield and His 9 Lives, which is a sequel to that game. Just some Game Boy games here. There's another 3D one for PlayStation 2 called Garfield Saving Arlene that came out in between the movies, and that one's probably the best one. It's going around the city, just kind of like a Super Mario style game. You know, there's some puzzles and stuff like that. You can make your own lasagna. You get little bits to create lasagnas and heal yourself, and then you can kick Odie into things and solve puzzles. So that one's actually playable and kind of fun. And then I played something called Garfield's Nightmare, which I don't even remember what it was, honestly.
Really left an impression on you.
It was just it's just a side scroller where you collect cake and like random stuff and coins, and that's it. It's nothing to be excited about here. And I've got a bunch more, unfortunately, but I think that's just a mix of, there's some side scroller games and there's a party game, and then there's some Mario Kart style racing games. So we'll see what happens. But I'm chugging away on those, or plugging away, and you can watch me play them on YouTube. So, I cut together these, I'm calling them a showcase of, this is all the Garfield games that are available to play. And I found almost all of them online through my various methods. So just showing you everything that's ever been made. It's not me beating every game. It's not, a completionist thing. I have a life, but and I like my life, and I don't want to hate it.
A big part of our lives, Garfield. It's Garfin. Yeah.
It's Garfin time.
That's right.
Were you going to say something? Did I cut you off?
I was just going to say it's amazing to think back. Like, all these games must have cost a chunk of money if you bought them for Game Boy or for the Nintendo Wii. And there's probably people out there who bought all of these, right?
There's probably some big Garf heads out there. Yeah.
Yeah. And
I mean, it spans back to 1985 through today, So I don't know.
Yeah.
At least a lot of them. Yeah, and back in the day, like every PlayStation 2 game was $60. Regardless of quality or length. Whereas now I feel like smaller games, there's a lot more like fluctuation in price on Steam or whatever with like indie games and stuff. These games would probably be, if they came out today, like a $20 game.
Or they would be a mobile game with like in-app purchases and that kind of shit. But
there's so many mobile games too, by the way, that are just I won't even begin to go down. They don't even have Wikipedia pages, so I'm not going there.
That's fair.
Yeah. But that's that. Go watch me on YouTube playing those. And also, Chris, what should our fans do with today's episode?
Yeah, man. Check the show notes. Again, we have some questions that we like to post as a survey. Please take our survey. We'll read your answers on next week's episode after we have gone to the theaters to watch the new Garfield movie. Wait. Take a peek at that survey. Answer some questions. Make some jokes, and we'll read your stuff on air.
And until then, keep it squeal.
Keep it squeal, baby.
I'm only going to do that through the end of this series.
Yeah, just one more of those. You just have to listen to it one more time.
One more, keep it squeal. All right, have a good one. Bye.